Bill Gates and the student trying to sleep in the library. It was a cold winter night, and the university library in Boston was nearly empty. The desks were covered with open books, cold coffee cups, and scattered notes left behind by exhausted students. The clock struck 2 a.m., and only one desk remained occupied. Jake, a 21-year-old ambitious student, was struggling with his studies. Finals week had arrived, and he had been running on little to no sleep for days. He stared at the lines in his textbook, but nothing was making sense. His eyelids grew heavy, and as fatigue took over, he rested his head on his books, hoping to steal a few minutes of sleep. Just then, the library door opened. Jake heard footsteps but was too exhausted to look up. The footsteps grew closer until they stopped right in front of him. A chair scraped against the floor, and someone sat down across from him. Curious, Jake slowly lifted his head, and his eyes widened in shock. Sitting across from him was none other than Bill Gates. "Long night?" Bill Gates asked with a slight smile. Jake was speechless for a moment before nodding. "Yeah, it's finals week. I'm exhausted, and no matter how hard I study, it never feels like enough." Bill Gates nodded knowingly. "I understand that feeling all too well," he said. "When I was younger, I spent countless nights studying in libraries just like this. But at some point, I realized that success isn't just about working long hours. It's about believing in what you're doing and finding the right strategy." Jake was intrigued. Here was one of the richest and most successful people in the world, telling him that he had once been just another struggling student. "But how?" Jake asked. "Sometimes it feels like no matter how hard I try, I'm just stuck in place." Bill Gates glanced at Jake's notes and then met his eyes. "Learning isn't just about memorizing information," he explained. "Real success comes from knowing how to apply what you learn. Think about how the things you're studying connect to the real world. Some of the greatest ideas come when you least expect them." Jake had never thought about it that way. Maybe he needed to change how he approached his studies. Bill Gates reached into his bag and pulled out a book, sliding it across the table to Jake. "This book changed the way I think. Maybe it will help you too." Jake picked up the book and read the title. He had heard of it before but never had the chance to read it. "Are you seriously giving this to me?" he asked, still in disbelief. Bill Gates smiled. "Someone once helped me when I was younger. Now it's your turn. But remember, if this book helps you, one day, you have to pass it on to someone else." Jake knew he would never forget those words. That night wasn't just about studying anymore. It was about changing his mindset. Bill Gates checked his watch and stood up. "I have to go now. But remember, the people who make the biggest impact aren't always the ones who work the longest. They're the ones who work the smartest." Jake nodded with gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Gates. I promise I won't waste this opportunity." Bill Gates smiled and walked toward the exit. Jake looked down at the book in his hands, feeling more awake than he had in days. He wasn't just studying to pass his exams anymore, he was studying to succeed. And this time, he knew exactly how to move forward. That night was a new beginning for Jake.